In this video, I'm going to share with you 7 spiritual quotes that if you understand them, they will change how you view yourself. They'll change how you view your life. They'll also change how you approach your life. They'll change what you go for, what you expect, and what you can create in a given day, in a given month, year. You can change your life dramatically. I'm going to go ahead and just jump straight to them and share my screen. The first one is a poem from a woman named Jessie Rittenhouse, written over 100 years ago. Here's what Jessie said. I bargained with life for a penny, and life would pay no more. However, I begged at evening when I counted my scanty store. Life is a just employer. He gives you what you ask, but once you have set the wages, why you must bear the task. I worked for a menial's hire, only to learn dismayed that any wage I had asked of life, life would have willingly paid. So this is the idea that you get in life what you ask for. Whatever you seek, you find. Whatever you focus on expands. And we all have an expectation of life. We all have an expectation for our day. But also, we actually commit to whatever we have. We negotiate for what we have, and then we just accept it. And so whatever you have in life is what you've accepted. Even if we all come from different backgrounds, we all come from different situations, we all have different traumas, and absolutely we're shaped by our environment. 100%. We're shaped by those around us. But at the end of the day, we do have our agency. And at the end of the day, we either do accept our lot or we expect something different. Actually, there's a great deal of research in psychology that talks about the expectation effect, that whatever you expect, you often get in the form of a placebo effect. But this is more directly going to the point of agency, that what are you actually asking of life? What are you consciously asking of life? What are you asking of 2023? What are you asking of the next 5 years? Do you have big, broad visions? Without vision and without purpose, people perish. That's going to actually hit one of the quotes that I hit later on. But this is an invitation for you to ask more of life. I love the quote that people are so busy looking for the bronze coins that they miss the gold ones all around them. That goes back to whatever you focus on expands. If you ask more of life, yes, life will then ask more of you. You'll be required to transform more, to change more. You'll have to pay a bigger price. But whatever you ask of life, that's what life will give you. And if you start asking more of life and getting more specific, then you will start to receive more. So that then takes me to the next quote. And this is actually from the Bible. It's from the New Testament. And these 2 scriptures. I was walking, I think it was yesterday. I was listening to this chapter and these 2 just hit me like a ton of bricks. And so this is, again, from the New Testament. It says, for verily I say unto you, that whosoever shall say unto this mountain, be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, and shall not doubt in his heart, but shall believe that those things which he saith shall come to pass, he shall have whatsoever he saith. Verse 24, therefore I say unto you, what things soever ye desire, when ye pray, believe that ye shall receive them, and ye shall receive them. This is the most common quote in all of the New Testament, all the words of Christ. Whether you're a believer in Christ or not, this is the most common phrase that came from the New Testament, and even the most common phrase from Christ, which is, ask and ye shall receive, seek and ye shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. And this is pretty bold, just the idea that whatever you ask, if you believe, if you don't doubt, you shall receive. This leads you to, what are you asking for in life? That's, you can go back to the other quote, but even more directly, obviously, this is talking about prayer and the power of prayer, the science of prayer. What are you asking? What are you asking for? And how persistent are you in that asking? And how open are you? And how committed are you? And how bold are you? When I was listening to this, it just led me to realize I'm not asking for enough. I'm not asking, and I'm not receiving enough. And so this is just an invitation for you to increase your faith, increase your belief, and increase what you ask for. And then you act. A connected quote with this that I love comes from Florence Shinn. She was a early 20th century writer, and she said that faith knows it has already received and acts accordingly. And so obviously a big aspect of faith is not only thinking, but then going from thinking to feeling to knowing, and knowing that what you want can be yours. This is the idea that believing that ye shall receive, having no doubt. And so I just ask you, what are you asking? If you are a faithful person, what are you asking of God? Are you asking for his help? What are you asking for? And how specific are you asking? These are bold scriptures in terms of, if ye shall ask whatsoever things ye desire, when ye pray, believe that ye shall receive them, and ye shall receive them. It's also obviously a caution, because you may be asking amiss. But at the end of the day, I believe God will give you what you ask for, even if it's right or wrong. And hopefully, as you develop your consciousness, as you grow, you'll want better and better things. There's also a similar quote that says that what you insistently desire over time, you will eventually become, and what you will receive. And so you can educate your desires. You can also, this fits with your input shapes your outlook as well. When people are growing up, most of their desires are based on culture, or based on social media, or based on their parents. But as you educate yourself, as you develop an inner voice, as you develop a relationship with God, a connection with your future self, you'll start to want better and better things, and you'll start to be able to ask for better things. But also you'll have the faith and the confidence and the courage to ask for better things, and nothing is possible. There's obviously a connected quote with this in the New Testament that says nothing is impossible with God. Nothing is impossible. It's no harder for God to move a mountain than to move a stone. And it's no harder for God to help you grow a $1 billion business than to grow $1 million business. It's not the size and the scope, it's your faith and your action and your willingness to be transformed. That goes straight back to the first poem. What are you asking of life? But also, not only what are you asking of life, what are you asking of God? The next one is a classic quote from Marianne Williamson. She said, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that others won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We are born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others." This is just the idea that there's so many beliefs about God, but sometimes people's belief about God, and it fits with maybe their own views of their parents, but they shrink and they feel like they have to be humble and small so that they're not highly egotistical. I actually love the quote and concept that as man now is, God once was, and as God now is, man may become. It's just the idea that we are the literal children of God. We lived with God before we came here. We chose to come here. This life is an education. There's a great book on this subject called Life is a Game. These are the rules. And one of the rules is obviously that you chose to come here and that life is filled with lessons, and lessons are repeated until they're learned. There are no mistakes in life, only lessons. We chose to come here, and also we're going to forget all these lessons when we're born. And so we lived with God before we came here. We chose to come here. Life is nothing but lessons. There's actually a connected quote on this from Dr. David Hawkins, and I actually have a separate quote from him that I'm about to share. But he just talks about how this life is an education. The problem is that we all have individually millions and millions of experiences throughout our lives, yet we resist learning. Most of us are on the hamster wheel. Think about yourself, for example, if you went back 10 years. Yes, you're very different from your former self, but how different? How much of your patterns, how much of your belief systems have persisted, and you're clinging to old ways and you're clinging to old perspectives? You are a child of God. You chose to come here. You have infinite potential, and your playing small doesn't serve the world. Next quote comes from James Allen in the book As a Man Thinketh. The quote is, "Men do not attract that which they want, but that which they are." So we are all showing up in a certain way. This has a lot to do with identity, that your identity is how you most identify yourself, how you describe yourself, what you see for yourself, but also what you see for your future. And it's not necessarily what you want. It's about who you are. It's about who you're being. It's about, and this fits with the whole be, do, have model, that most people think they have to first have something in order to do what they want and eventually be who they want to be. But the opposite is true, is that you're always being someone. And whoever you're being is going to influence what you do and what you ultimately have. And so you have to focus first on being and about who you are. I actually like James Clear's work on this subject. He talks about building habits that are identity-based habits, about the type of person you are. And what you are shapes what you do, and vice versa, what you do shapes who you are. This is just the idea of your beingness. And so this fits a lot with the research on future self, about connecting with your future self, about being your future self, about being the type of person you want to be, and doing what your future self would do. If you start doing what your future self would do, you'll have what your future self would have. And so you have to transform your identity. And from a psychological standpoint, your identity is what you're most committed to. Your identity is not only the story, the narrative, the belief you have about yourself, but it's about what you're committed to as a person. It's also, a lot of it has to do with your level of consciousness, that as you let go of past stories and past commitments, and as you learn to let things go and be at a place of peace, joy, confidence, and then also a place of commitment and courage, you will start to change. And so you right now are being a certain way, and you are a certain way, and you want to evolve your identity before anything else. And that has a lot to do with healing your past, telling a different story, being grateful, and then ultimately choosing who you want to be, being conscious of your future self, asking for better things, and then consciously showing up. And a lot of this has to do with journaling as well, about reflecting on who you are right now, reflecting on how you're being, getting open feedback, and then showing up differently. Let me give a personal example. Me and my wife adopted 3 kids from the foster system, and then we had 3 more. But my relationship with some of the older ones had a lot of friction for a while. And even though I tried to do the right things, I wasn't being a loving father. And so recently I've focused a lot more on being than doing. And I've just focused on connecting with the kids, being more at peace, bringing better energy, being more loving, being more supportive. And so when you start with being, and you start being your future self and thinking what your future self would want you to do, and the life you'd want to have, and operating based on intentionality and vision, you start to quickly have what you want. You do not attract what you want, but you attract what you are. Another great quote from this book is just, and I think this is basically the emphasis of the title itself, is that what you think about, you eventually become. What you think about, you create. Whatever you focus on expands. And so whatever you're thinking about persistently and insistently, you're creating in your life. Next quote comes from Dr. David Hawkins. This is from his book, Letting Go. He said, "The unconscious will allow us to have only what we think we deserve. The more we hang on to our negativity and the small self-image that results, the less we think we deserve, and we unconsciously deny ourselves the abundance which flows so easily to others. That is the reason for the saying, the poor get poor and the rich get richer. If we have a small view of ourselves, then what we deserve is poverty, and our unconscious will see to it that we have that actuality." This fits exactly with the last one, which is you don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. And your unconscious is very deep. It's the deeper emotional side. Most people are operating on a purely subconscious level, meaning they're just repeating over and over and over again the cycles. And so if you want to transform your outer world, you have to actually transform at the subconscious level. You've got to heal your inner story, but also what you believe you deserve. A lot of that has to do with reframing the past, about developing what would be called post-traumatic growth, rather than avoiding the past, rather than being the victim of your past, rather than being the victim of your experiences. You actually decide what your experiences mean. You own your experiences. A huge aspect of post-traumatic growth, but also becoming what Nassim Taleb would call anti-fragile, is just the idea that everything in your past happened for you, not to you. Everything made you better, not bitter. And also, you're the owner of your experiences. They're not the owner of you. No one else has access to your experiences. You can shape any experience to benefit you. And that's actually what post-traumatic growth is that you shape the meaning of your experiences. You're always better. You're always more grateful. Gratitude goes a long way with post-traumatic growth as well. This is about intentionally framing your experiences. And this is a big part of cognitive behavioral therapy, but you get to frame your experiences no matter what way you want. And if you're not consciously approaching your past, but instead you're avoiding your past, if you have a negative frame of your past, then you're going to expect and predict negative frames about your future. But also, if you're avoiding your past, then you're going to be avoiding your future. And everything in your life is going to be lived out as though your worst past is still happening. Because we all go through trauma. If you don't reframe it and don't learn from it and aren't grateful for it and don't use it as something that benefits you for the long run, then everything in your life right now will be lived out as a coping mechanism, as though that terrible past was still occurring. And you don't want to live that way. That there's no need to live that way. Instead, you can approach your past, learn from it, reframe it, change it, and evolve from it. A lot of journaling, a lot of self-reflection, a lot of healing. And then just on a daily basis, regularly transforming your subconscious and guiding it in a specific direction. There's a great quote from Thomas Edison. He said, "Never go to bed without a request to your subconscious." What you do before bed, and I would say the hour before bed and also the hour after you wake up, has a phenomenal impact on your subconscious. And you can proactively shape it. Instead of scrolling or doing whatever you're doing, your input shapes your outlook. First off, you'd want better and better inputs. You'd want to affirm better inputs. You'd want to have better conversations. All progress starts by telling the truth. This has a lot to do with approaching your past, unwinding your past, freeing yourself from things that you have been clinging on to and holding on to. Also, genuinely thinking about your future self. There's a lot of research that shows that simply people don't think about their future self very much. We all often have a fixed mindset where we think that our future self is the same person we are today. Instead, you want to spend a lot of time meditating, visualizing, having gratitude. These things are all powerful transformers of your subconscious. And then just taking goal-oriented action. If you're taking intentional goal-oriented action, even getting small wins, those small wins impact your identity. At night, rather than scrolling, rather than procrastinating sleep, rather than feeding your subconscious trash, your input shapes your outlook. Give yourself space. Reflect on your day. Reflect on what went well. Have honest self-evaluations. A big part of changing your subconscious is obviously being more honest with yourself. All progress starts by telling the truth. And so have honest self-evaluation, not negative shame-based evaluation, but just look at it. Say, what happened this week? Or what happened this year? What happened the last 5 years? Write it down. Reflect on it. What did I learn? How am I different from my past self? But also, where have I held myself back? There's a great quote actually from J.M. Barrie. He is the original author or writer, I guess you could say, of the Peter Pan play that became the movies and stuff like that. But J.M. Barrie said, "The life of every person is a diary in which he writes one story while meaning to write another, and his most humble hour is when he compares the volume as he's writing it with what he vowed it to be. All of our lives are like a diary or a story in which we're writing one while intending to write another. And our most humble hour is when we just compare the volume as we've written it so far, or as we're writing it now, with what we intended it to be. So at night, rather than scrolling, give yourself the space, visualize your future self, write things down, have honest self-evaluation, then visualize who you want to be the next day. Visualize your future self. Again, back to Thomas Edison, never go to bed without a request to your subconscious. Visualize your future self, even pray. Back to prayer. Pray and visualize and ask for God's help. Get a good night's sleep, ask for help the next day, and then see who you're going to be. Write it down, make a commitment to yourself, then go to bed. Then when you wake up, you'll have a purpose. Without purpose, people perish. If you don't have a purpose, then you're relying on willpower, not why power. But if you wake up with a purpose, it's so much easier to get up, get out of bed, have energy, and get moving forward and focus on the important, not the urgent. And then take goal-oriented action, start stacking wins. There's a great book on the subject called Make Your Bed, which is just that we all are momentum-based beings. And so if you wake up and if you start stacking wins, make your bed, hydrate yourself, visualize gratitude, give yourself the space, and then start working on something super important, some future self opportunity, and just taking goal-oriented action. That then leads to increasing more of itself. Like attracts like. Whatever you do, you'll want more of. And so if you wake up reactive and staring at your screen, then unconsciously you're just going to create more of that. But if you start purposefully thinking about your future self, reflecting on what you want, praying about what you want, affirming what you want, having what would be like having good people around you that you can talk to and strategize, and then making changes, and then having honest self-evaluation, self-reflection. All progress starts by telling the truth. Over time, you'll change what you see. Whatever you insistently think about, you'll eventually become. But whatever you're becoming, you'll attract more of. And then just whatever you're asking for. Back to the first two. What are you asking of life, but also what are you asking of God? You can choose those things. You can ask for better things. You can seek better things. You can train your mind to create better things. It's called selective attention in psychology. And so it's just a continuous process of evolving your subconscious. And a lot of that is emotional work. It's about becoming more aware of what you're still holding on to, letting that go, but also affirming and moving in the direction of where you want to go, becoming more approach oriented. A lot of times, and this is true of therapy, it's often not honestly that useful to continuously keep digging up your past. I mean, I find it useful because I'm always reframing my past and pulling gold from it. But if you're thinking about the future you want, and if you're committed, and if you're courageous, and if you're proactively moving in the direction you want to go, you're actually getting small wins and making progress, that alone will transform your identity. It will transform how you feel. And that kind of fits with the feedback loop of your thoughts, your actions impact your identity, but also your identity impacts those things. And so it's a continuous feedback loop. All right, this is a quote from William Hutchinson Murray, which I love. He said, "Until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness." So until you're committed, there is hesitancy and the chance to draw back. If there's a chance to draw back, then you're ineffective. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there's one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. So there's one elementary truth. And if you're ignorant of it, it's going to kill ideas and plans. That the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. So once you fully commit, once you have a definiteness of purpose, once you're fully committed, once you have made a decision, it's that idea that once you make a decision, the universe conspires to make it happen. This is saying the same thing. That the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. And this goes straight back to you don't attract what you want, but you attract who you are. Once you get fully committed, because your identity is what you're most committed to, once you get fully committed, you have a different orientation towards the world. You're now operating differently. You're operating from a place of commitment. And when the why is strong enough, you'll find the how. When the why is strong enough, you'll be doing things differently. You'll be willing to do things differently. You'll also see things differently. And so you'll approach things differently. And also vice versa. The world will respond differently to you. Providence will respond differently to you. God will respond differently to you. So the question is, how committed are you? Are you definitely committed? Are you asking for what you want from the world, but also are you asking God? And then are you thinking about it? And then are you upgrading your subconscious through being honest self-evaluation, but also in the evening, visualizing your future self, praying, asking God for help, and then going to bed, and then ultimately committing. And then the next day, going through with it. So this quote actually continues. So I'm going to repeat. That the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that never otherwise would have occurred. A whole stream of events issues from the decision. And I love this. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidences and meetings and material assistance which no man could have dreamt would have come his way. I have learned a deep respect for one of Goethe's couplets. Whatever you can do or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic to it. I've seen this so many times in my life, but it's just the idea that, and this goes straight back to the James Allen quote, that you attract not what you want, but what you are. And once you get committed, you now are a different person. Once you've passed that threshold of commitment, I actually call it the point of no return. I even studied this in a research setting in my master's, studying the difference between wannabe entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs. But once you reach a point of commitment, the essence of full commitment is courage. And courage, in a lot of ways, is the starting point of all change. Once you're courageous, you're no longer afraid of approaching your past. You're also no longer afraid of failure. This is a big aspect of the research on growth mindset by Carol Dweck, is that people with a growth mindset don't avoid failure. They actually embrace failure because they know that they can learn from failure. They know that their future self will be different and less ignorant than they are now. If you have a fixed mindset, you radically avoid failure because you think that those failures define you. And because you have a fixed mindset, meaning you can't change, if you fail, you think that that means that you're a bad person. I love this quote actually from Brene Brown. She said, "You're either trying to be right or you're trying to get it right." And if you're trying to be right, then that means that you have high ego, and it means you're trying to like prove your current self, your knowledge, you're unwilling to change. Whereas if you're just trying to get it right, then you don't need to prove your current self. Like, I know that in the future, I'm going to know things I don't know now. And so I'm willing to get it right. And so that's just a big aspect of not avoiding failure. Having a growth mindset means you embrace learning, and you know you can turn any failure into a gain. This is also something that Seth Godin said. He said, "If I fail more than you, I win." If you commit, and if you're fully committed, then providence will move too. Then you are operating in the world differently than you were before. Then you have a different orientation. And this fits with a lot of the research on hope and what psychologists would call pathways thinking, that once you get committed, and commitment is actually, in a lot of ways, the foundation of hope. Hope is very powerful. Without hope, and this goes straight back to prospection, if you have a pessimistic or a negative view of the future, of course, that's not going to be good for your motivation. You can't be gritty, according to research by Dr. Angela Duckworth, without hope. Hope is the foundation of grit. It's also the energy wave that keeps you going, but the foundation of hope is actually commitment. Once you get committed, then your hope will expand. And also your pathways. Pathways thinking being the idea that once the why is strong enough, you will find the how. Also, using Viktor Frankl's language, if you have a why to live for, you can bear anyhow. You can overcome any obstacles. You can overcome challenges and difficulties, but also you will find the how. And also the how will find you. Using his language, all sorts of things, you'll attract all the right things, but it's also because you'll be acting in a different way. You'll be having a different orientation towards life. You'll be seeing things and doing things your past self simply wouldn't have done. This actually also fits with the quote that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And it's not necessarily that a teacher will appear. It's just the idea that once you're ready, committed, and then willing to be courageous, then you're no longer hiding from the truth. You're no longer essentially avoiding the reality checks that will come with getting what you want. Once you're ready, you're fully willing to actually self-evaluate and be really honest about all the ways in which you're holding yourself back. But also, once you're ready, you'll start to see things you didn't see before. You'll be committed at a different level. You'll be willing to be courageous. You'll be willing to do things your past self simply wouldn't have done. You'll be willing to do whatever is required to achieve the goal. And you'll be willing to find, iterate, and change the path and change yourself to get to where you want to be. You'll become who you want to be. The final quote comes from Viktor Frankl in the book Man's Search for Meaning, and this fits with all the others. Frankl said, "What man actually needs is not a tensionless state, but rather the striving and struggling for a worthwhile goal, a freely chosen task. What he needs is not the discharge of tension at any cost, but the call of a potential meaning waiting to be fulfilled in him." So he learned this from hard experience. He learned this in the concentration camps during World War II. He was a Jewish psychiatrist. His family got killed in the gas chambers and things like that. But what he noticed is that once a person lost hope and purpose in their future, especially in those dire situations, they quickly died. He said that once you lose hope or once you lose faith in your future, you begin to physically and spiritually decay. We all need a purpose, a goal to which we're committed, to which we're striving for, to which we're visioning and becoming. Without a goal, it's hard to score. But also without a goal, your life has no direction. Without a goal, you're not stretching and striving, and you want powerful goals. You want impossible goals. You want goals that require faith. You want goals that require commitment. You want goals that stretch you, transform your life, transform what you see and who you are. As he said, without purpose, people perish. And he saw that in literal terms. Without having a goal to strive for, the people in the concentration camps died. But as he quoted Nietzsche all the time. When you have a why to live for, you can bear almost anyhow. When you have a why to live for, you have spiritual strength, spiritual energy. So these are 7 spiritual quotes. I sprinkled a few others in there that will change your life, that will change what you ask for of life, that will change what you ask for of today, that will change what you ask for in January of 2023, that will change how you pray, that will change what you pray for. They'll change your identity. They'll change who you are. And eventually, as you decide what you want. And as you then go for that, you'll eventually want better and better things. You'll know that your future self will know things you don't know now. God will work with what you want right now. Whatever you want right now, work with that. Strive for that. And over time, as you put better inputs in, as you make progress towards those things, your vision for what you can have and what you can want will evolve, and it will get better over time. But it's essential to have a purpose, and then to be asking and striving for that purpose, to be asking God, and to continuously be growing your vision and growing your knowledge, growing your understanding, having better inputs, weeding out almost everything. Almost everything in life is a distraction from what matters. Almost everything in life will shrink your view of yourself and train you to believe you're much less than you actually are. This is why I love the Marianne Williamson quote. Who are you? You're a child of God. Why play small? So your input shapes your identity. It shapes how you see yourself. It shapes who you're being, and who you're being is ultimately going to attract what you have. And we need a purpose. That is one of the big things that makes human beings who we are, is that we actually have agency. We actually have the ability to think about the future. We have the ability to make choices, commit, make decisions, and decide. And whatever you're committed to, that's who you're being. Whatever you're committed to, that's your identity. Yes, there's so many things that impact us. Yes, our genes. Yes, our environment, all those things. But as Neil Maxwell said, there is still an inner zone. We still have this place. Even Frankl said, in between stimulus and response, there's a space. There's an inner zone within all of us that we get to decide to a large degree what we want. And then we get to learn how to commit to that and become that and expand that. And then we get more and more agency along the way. Hope that helps. My name is Dr. Benjamin Hart. This video is a little different than the others, but I do like sharing some of these spiritual ideas, these spiritual quotes. So if you like it, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe and have an amazing day.